Tagparampayaya Vidmahe Jnanalingeshwaraya Dhimahi Tanno Guruhu Prachodayate Om. Okay, so continuing with the mental health today, I'm going to actually hand over the first session to Jaqui, who's got a lot of experience and expertise in bereavement, worked for many years in bereavement and done lots of different courses and lots of qualifications. So I'm really interested to hear as well from Jaqui. So Jaqui, if you'd like to kick off, and then when you're done, we'll come back. I'm just going to unmute you.
Namaste, everyone. Namaste.
Hello. Can you hear me perfectly? Okay. I just want to say thank you to Deepika for asking me to do this. And my goal today is just to have you feeling really relaxed and comfortable with grieving people. As a grief counsellor, we see ourselves more as mourning. And when I say mourning, it's M-O-U-R-I-N-G, right? Rather than grieving, because we encourage an outward expression of the grief that's held inside. And that's what we say mourning is, very simplistically. And I want you guys to be comfortable. You're not counselors for grieving people, you're yoga therapists. And I want to introduce to you a concept that I think you will find very easy to be with. And it's called companioning. So we're turning the word companion to a verb. And this was work done by Dr. Alan Wolfelt of the Center for Loss and Life Transition in Fort Collins, Colorado, who's a grief counselor, a teacher. And as companions, we do things differently. We're not there to treat, and that's the key. We're not there to treat people who are in grief. So companions is you learn from others. Companioning is being curious and wanting to find out more from the griever. And also companioning is allowing the bereaved person to teach you. They are the expert in their own grief and in the relationship they had with that person. So as companions, we watch out for, we keep and honor, and we bear witness to the pain of someone in grief. So we're present to their pain. We don't take their pain away. That's not our job. We do respect disorder and confusion. You know, when you've lost someone to death, life is never going to be the same again. There's an awful lot of figuring stuff out. So disorder and confusion are very necessary, and we don't impose order and logic to that. We listen to what they say, and we honor all the if-onlys. If only I had done this differently, or if only he hadn't gone there that day. Those are very important to speak of. So this means that our job is to be still. And you yoga people are very good at being still and teaching that. No frantic movement forward. This is more of an art than a science. We're honoring the spirit, and we're not focusing on the intellect. So we're not there to teach or to move or to do anything except honor where the grieving person is. And we're asking them to tell us more about their if-onlys. The mystery of death and dying has very much been obscured by our frantic world, but it is a mystery. We can think we know, we can have faith in things, but we don't really know. So we're witnessing, and witnessing is not a doorway to somewhere else. Witnessing is for the moment. We're not attached to outcome. So that's very different from the medical model of care. And we often have a need to change the bereaved person. We want them to be somewhere else. We want them to feel better. But again, we have to avoid that because that's not what they need from us. We have to see them in the moments that they are there and what they're sharing with us at the time. So as a companion to a grieving person, we're sharing in what we call soul work, which is a downward movement of the psyche. downward and a willingness to connect with them to the dark spaces, very deep and sometimes not very pleasant places that people are very unwilling to talk about because they're afraid of upsetting their friends and family. So as a third party, you can really be there for somebody who does need to explore some of the places that they go when they're deeply grieving. As we join them, we are helping them by leading them to spirit work, because we're in the place of hope for a grieving person. And that's the most important part, I think, is that we represent a hope of something that is good that will come someday. We don't want to move them quickly to where we want them to be, but we want to introduce them to the possibility that there will be a good coming someday. So being present to them in the moment means companioning and not treating. So bereavement is something very different from our everyday life and experience. When someone is torn away from us through death, we do feel like we have been torn apart. We talk about special needs in a different way, but the bereaved person really does have special needs, and they need to be treated differently from the person who has not gone through this experience. As a bereaved person, they often feel like they are suspended in time between a past that they long for, they want to have it all back, and a future that they hope for, but they really can't see at the moment. They have a barren present, sort of like sailing on a sea that has nothing in it, just a sea of nothingness. So it's a very, very scary place to be. They have sometimes a loss of self, or who am I without that person? A loss of security, a loss of meaning and purpose in life. There's a ripple effect from the loss of that person in their whole experience of their life. And in adults, we're very good at using words to express this. In children and teens, as you can imagine, behaviors will change. Children haven't got the words, so you'll see differences in their behaviors that might give you a clue that this is a child struggling with their grief. We talk about treading water. If you don't grieve and you don't know how to outwardly express that grief, which is mourning, you can just be frozen in time, or just treading water, or just unable to function in a normal way, or just going through the motions of life. Teens can suffer an acute loss of self-confidence, and so can other people, adults too, and they need us to be the emotional and spiritual anchors in their life. Sometimes it's a matter of showing them who in their life would be that person for them, and just giving them permission to speak to that person and express what's happening to them. The person who died is a mirror. You can imagine that the person who died can be the only mirror to their life, telling them who they are, what they are, where they're supposed to be, and that person has gone. So often emotional, physical, and fiscal lifestyle security can be taken away by the death. And we always say that protest is so much better than despair. So encouraging people to speak of their emotions is key. The universe has changed. The bereaved person is now aware of the cosmic nature of the universe, the cosmic nature of grief in their universe. Nothing makes sense the way it did before the death. They have a changed and scary worldview, and they have no control over things in life. Sometimes a child may worry that the other parent is also going to die, and who is going to look after them? Even as adults, you know, we're very dependent on partners and parents in our lives. So there's a loss of meaning because we now have destroyed dreams and shared goals. Sometimes we lose faith in God and we lose our joy in life because everything has changed. So we encourage people to use the why. Why did this happen? Why did God allow this to happen? And that can then move into the hows, which is where you want people to then move to. How am I going to cope? How is my life going to look now? They don't need answers from us. That's not our job. They just need our presence and our witness, and to provide a sacred space for them to feel able to express themselves. And the search for meaning is what people are really trying to do. They have to find a new meaning, why this person lived and why they died, and where do I go from here? And we just create a spontaneous momentum by being mindful, allowing them to move through their thought processes in the normal, natural way. So we facilitate things for them. We make things easier by just being a companion. We can't take their pain away. We cannot tell them how to move forward. We can only be there for them and companion them through this. So if we come with our intervention skills, our rigid plan of activities, if we come between them and their natural momentum, we can actually do some harm. So having that space and being that meaningful companion that is just there to listen is the most important thing. So in our current culture, we are really conditioned to want to cure or fix people, aren't we? Being attached to outcome is a big deal in the medical world. Speeding up the process to get them back to what we think of as normality, when nothing is normal for them right now. But across all the age groups, what people really need from us is to help them to slow down, to say hello to the person who died before rushing to say goodbye, to do what we like to call closure. As companions, we are witnesses to their grief. We are not attached to outcome. We cannot overlook the spiritual nature of the grief journey. It is a very individual journey. And we have to be acknowledging for them the mystery surrounding death and making sense of this. Not having the answers is perfect. No one has all the answers. Our job isn't to have the answers for them. So normal grief expressions are often seen as depression, anxiety, loss of control. And again, in a normal grieving situation, we do not treat those things. We hold them up and we honor them as manifestations of the grief. However, obviously, as we've heard before, if there are prior histories of bioclinical depression, we do need to monitor these very carefully during grieving. And we communicate to the GP if we're concerned in any way about somebody who has the grief on top of an already damaged psyche and they're struggling with other things. There's always a lovely turning inwards, a time of deep contemplation. And sometimes someone looking from the outside can see this and think that it is depression. But that time of contemplation, that time of low energy, of maybe needing to sleep more, not speak to the people they would normally speak to, but spend more alone time, is a very normal, natural part of the grieving process. As a companion, we will enter into the griever's thoughts and feelings without thinking that it's our job to change them. We want to say in our heads, teach me how you feel. So they really are the teacher, we are the student when it comes to being with a grieving person. So much mystery exists around death and loss, and our culture is way too rational, and we can rip away that mystery and want to push somebody to where we feel comfortable with them being. And they may need to scream, they may need to cry, they may need to tear their hair. All those things are all part of natural, normal grief, which in our culture, we are very uncomfortable with witnessing. And that is something that we have to work on within ourselves when we're with a grieving person. The emotional and the spiritual aspects of death and loss are something that cannot be measured because every person's individual relationship will be different. So if one person dies, there are 3 or 4 siblings and maybe a brother and a sister, and you're talking to all of them individually, you may hear about completely different aspects of the person who died. So who was that person for you? You may know someone else's experience of them, but you don't know this individual's. So listening and encouraging them to speak is key to helping them. Unbending structure and rigidity have no place in the oscillation of the mourner's feelings, and they really do oscillate. Talking about the mind and the changes and the churning, when you're grieving, things can always change from moment to moment. And searching for meaning in that is really frightening for some grievers. And that's where I think when they're coming to you, and grief is sometimes a side issue that just pops up, because it's not usually the thing they come to you with, you can then really help by providing them with something very simple that they can then incorporate in their day to hold on to. There's a really important place for ritual in a griever's journey, and coming to you and asking for some simple yoga breathing, some meditation that is meaningful to them, some easy movements that they can remember, because their brain is going to be scattered and all over the place in new grief. Something that you can help them return to when they feel the need for some peace and some calmness will really help. So just to recap again, companioning, a beautiful way of looking at our role in a griever's life. We're not there to treat. Treating is Latin for dragging, like you're dragging somebody where you think they need to be. We're not doing that. We want to walk beside them, walk with them, and we want to listen. So as companions to a griever, we're creating a safe place for them to mourn. And as companions, we can give them information, give them some education, and then honor the choice that they make. Empower them to know that they can do this with somebody's support alongside them. We are advocates of their needs, and we are witnesses to their journey and their mourning. So I hope that just helps a little bit to put your role in perspective with the grieving person. And know that this again will be something that comes in sideways at you. Often they don't even realize that that's what is holding them back, or what's causing them to have physical sensations as well. That can be something that can come in and you can take a hold of and just help them to explore that.
That's brilliant, Jaqui. Yeah. Has anyone got any questions maybe for Jaqui? Yeah, Izzy, do you want to?
I just wondering, it just literally came to me then. Does grief also, or mourning, can be around situations as well, not just around the loss of something? Like, for instance, having a totally different childbirth, for instance, would you approach it from this viewpoint as well?
Absolutely, because loss is loss. So I think if you take away the death of a person, just look at loss.
Okay.
So a loss of something that you have expected or you have planned for, that you have really looked forward to, like as you say, having had a natural birth and then having to have the cesarean. When you have a cesarean, and especially when it's not planned, that's an assault on your person. And obviously it's for the right reasons, and the doctors are saving you and your child. But yes, I mean, there's a lot of loss, a lot of grief and trauma surrounding that. And that's a good example. But yes, loss of a house, loss of a job, loss of a favorite book. I mean, your loss of childhood when you had to grow up really quick. I mean, all sorts of things we're grieving for as we go through life. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. That was so wonderful, everything you said, Jaqui, and really, really helpful.
Thank you.
Claire, I think you had a question. Claire?
Yeah, hi, thanks, Jaqui. That was really helpful. I have a question that I don't know if this changes the way that you would work with somebody or walk alongside them. But if they lost somebody to suicide, how is there any way that you could deal with things differently?
Yes.
Why, for example?
Suicide is quite often what we call a complicated form of grief. There are many, many types of complicated grief. And with suicide, doesn't matter what age the person is who comes to you, we basically want to know not so much about the suicide, but who was that person to you? Tell me about her. You want to bring that person back to them and explore the relationship that they had with that person. So we don't focus on the manner of death. They might bring that back for themselves, but and that's fine. But what we're trying to help them do is remember who that person was for them, the role they played in their life, and start grieving for that person.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
That's great. Anyone else? Ruth, yeah.
Sorry, couldn't get to my mute. I just thought I'd share with you that I have got a mother-in-law who grieves her animals just like she would a human as well.
Yes.
So the animals are really, really high up there.
Oh,
with
yeah.
Human loss.
Yes.
She would be crying every week, week in and week out for months on end when her horse passed away, and then the dog, and then the cat. Yeah, really, really gets to her. Yeah. Yeah,
I understand. I still cry for my horses. Yeah, I mean, animals are very important souls in our lives, aren't they? And yes, we do need to remember that is the case for a lot of people. Some people say they love their four-legged friends more than they love their two-legged friends, because that unconditional love and support they get from them. So yes, I would always honor the loss of that and check in and find out how they're doing. Yes. One thing people are scared of doing is mentioning the names of the person who dies. And I hear that a lot from grieving people, that no one ever talks about them. So I often will ask, what was her name, or what was his name? And they speak the name, and just speaking the name to someone is very powerful for a lot of people. It really brings that person back. And if you know someone who has lost a child, or don't be frightened to mention that child's name and ask them how they're doing, because everyone else is shying away from it. And what they need most is for someone they can actually speak to and mention the name of the person. Yeah.
I was just going to say as well, people can be grieving while a person's still alive.
Yes.
Because I know when my granddad had a stroke, and he never really got better from that. And I was, for a couple of years probably, I was, really quite distressed and upset about that. And when he did finally die, I didn't cry at all, because I'd already sort of gone through that before while he was still alive. So I think sometimes people will be grieving before it's even happened.
Very much so. Yes, that's beautiful. Thank you for bringing that up, because often we see that. And when you see the people who are in the hospitals fighting for their lives with COVID, some of the families are doing a lot of that work, knowing that the chances are they won't come out. So we do see a lot of what we do call pre-death grief work. And also when you have somebody who's fading, like your grandfather, you're grieving for the healthy, vibrant person they were as they slowly fade away. Each little loss, you can take to heart, and you can grieve for as you go. So yeah, that is very much, actually, I think that's quite a useful thing to be doing. Not everyone can do that. People don't want to face up to a loved one who's fading away for whatever reason. So the ones that can do that, I think, will be in a good place. Yeah.
Ask something. Thank you for that, Jackie. That was brilliant. Just chatting to young teenagers, I find a lot of them don't have a faith.
Yeah.
And so, that's quite difficult, because I agree that spiritual side of things is so important. But if they haven't grown up with a faith as such, how do you handle that?
Teens are really lovely to work with when you've got a group of them together. That's my favorite way of working with teens, because they really play off each other, and they get to know each other really well over the weeks that we work with them. But if you're dealing with just one or two, doing an activity with them rather than face-to-face is better. And talking to them about spirituality, ask them, what is spirituality to you? We're body, mind, and spirit, but what is it to you? Ask them what it is to them. And I think you'll find a lot of people don't have like the traditional faith in a God, but they have, you know, they have faith in other things like the natural world, the things that the kids really connect to, like some of the music that they listen to. So I think you will find that everybody has spirituality. It just may not look like yours.
Sure.
And helping them to explore that for themselves, that will open their eyes to what they think is spirituality. I think they might surprise you with what they tell you. Yeah.
Thank you, Jaqui.